overview and scrutiny committee meeting, if we could have it, is that they must be held in public, and they, in effect, they must be held as a physical meeting with the members present together, with the opportunity for the public and the press to attend. Because of the social distancing guidance from the government, can't hold a physical meeting, and therefore the question becomes, can we hold a virtual meeting as the Overview and Scrutiny Committee with full powers to make decisions? The government or Parliament passed the Coronavirus Act 2020 last week. It's got royal assent, and that makes provision for regulations to be made by way of a statutory instrument to set out the rules for local government meetings, including the possibility of having virtual meetings. To date, we have no statutory instrument to do that, so there is no law as of now permitting us to hold a meeting of Overview and Scrutiny Committee virtually, and we're waiting for the statutory instrument to come out to tell us what would be involved if we were to do that. So as of right now, Chair, we have no ability to hold a lawful decision-making meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I just remind people that you should see somewhere on your screen around your name.
Oh, I see. Did
right
you?
online,
I think you've gone to the different link. You've gone to a different link. I think so. So, you know the email that you sent to yourself?
Sorry, who's speaking?
No, don't click on the big bit. So yeah, click on the email. Yeah. Yes, click on that email bit.
That's Dan Tarrant
Yes.
explaining how to get on the meeting to somebody, I think.
Oh, right, okay.
The mute button should be in the bottom left-hand corner.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody should have a mute button for themselves. If you could please mute yourself except when you're speaking. And if you...
Oh, it has started. I can see what... I bet that's because...
And if you click on chat, which is at the bottom of my screen, you should see a chat panel where you can send messages to people during the meeting. You should also see a participants list to click on, and then you will see a list of everybody. What would be very useful is if you use the raise hand function,
so
which
you've got
on the participants list, and then I will see whether you are
got the email and you've clicked the click here to join.
Whether you wish to speak. Are people comfortable with that? Is it Jocelyn? I don't think you're muted. Alex, I don't think you're muted. Oh, Jocelyn's muted now. Alex?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We can, but when you're not actually addressing the meeting, there should be a mute button for you to be able to mute yourself.
Can't see one on the screen. No, can't see one.
Right. If you.
Where will it be?
Are you on a computer rather than a phone?
It's in the bottom left-hand corner.
Laptop. You should see it somewhere. If you hover above on your picture, you should see. With your mouse, you should see the word mute come up.
Taking you to that
right, I think I've got it top left-hand corner.
Fine, okay. Mine's top right, but each to his own.
Mine's bottom left.
Password.
Right. Okay.
Go up a bit.
Good morning, Andy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Don't do that. On the actual email.
Right.
Yeah.
Could we clarify who's assisting whom to get on to the link?
Under where it says click here to join, does it?
Lorna, could I suggest that the web meetings host passes on the host to you, Lorna?
Immediately above that password.
Or mutes themselves while they're explaining something else.
I'll email him and get him. I think he's on another phone. So I'll do that.
Right. In the meantime, can we sort of proceed? So we've now had from Dermot, for those who've just joined us.
Let me try another way.
We've had the advice that we
by the web browser.
have no legal power.
Right, let's do it a different way. So
to meet in any formally constituted form. So that leaves us unable to make any decisions.
You've got the
and therefore
big button above.
Also unable to meet formally at 11 o'clock.
That's it.
Lorna?
I said don't
Alex, yes.
press it.
Well, on Friday, our town clerk had a conversation with Chris Bowden and to define things. Yes, Dermot's quite right. The legislation has been approved, but it has not been enacted as of this moment in time.
Which is what Dermot said earlier.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. So therefore, we cannot meet formally. However, what we can do is we have a number of matters on our agenda which we can talk informally about. We believe that the mayor is willing to come along virtually at 10:30, and we can have an informal conversation about anything that we wish to ask the mayor. And of course, we can talk about anything else on the agenda informally in terms of seeing whether there are any issues, questions that we wish to ask officers about, and we can take those away and do that by correspondence. Does that suit people? Are people broadly happy with that?
Yes.
Can you nod
Yep.
or shake your head? Or yeah, good. Okay, that's great. In terms of the mayor, is there anything in particular that anybody wishes to ask the mayor? I'm assuming that it would be helpful if he gave us a summary of the update that he gave to the board on Wednesday last week about what the combined authorities response is looking like to COVID-19. Does that make sense?
Agreed.
Yeah. And is there anything that anybody would want to ask in particular about that, first of all? Alex?
I'd like to know, with the COVID-19 restrictions that are going on, how does this affect the work program on major projects that are taking place?
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be something on our mind. Okay. Anything else anybody's particularly going to want to ask him about COVID-19? No? Is there anything else in general? Because when he comes to us, we can have a sort of a fairly open floor. Marcus, could you unmute yourself and tell us?
Yeah, I had raised my hand on the thing, but
Sorry, didn't see.
Yeah, I think I'd like to know how the mayor is going to respond to the COVID-19 crisis with regards to bus services. If we're in danger of losing all the bus services in the next 6 months, then as the transport authority, he needs to step in and either take over certain bus companies or do something else to address the bus crisis. Mm-hmm. I also didn't quite understand how he's collaborating with the NHS. I think you asked the question, Lorna, at the meeting, but I don't think that either the response was muddled or I didn't fully understand how exactly he's collaborating with the commissioning group and how he's making sure that the businesses that we have in our combined authority are actually contributing to the NHS effort.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Nope. Right, okay. I don't think we're going to have Austin. Oh, sorry, was there anything anybody in general wanted to ask the mayor while he was with us? No. I think then let's just, sorry. Multiple screens here. Yeah, I don't think we're going to have Austin Adams with us, are we, Robert?
No, Chair.
What I've actually done is sent an email to all the officers and contributors that were going to attend the formal meeting at 11 a.m. and just said, look, still hold on. We're still waiting at statutory instrument. You never know. It might come through before 11. But if we can't go ahead with a meeting, I'll stand them all down.
Okay, that's
obviously
great.
Apart from the mayor at 10:30.
Yeah, Okay, thank you very much for that, Robert. Market Town Master Plans was on our agenda. There was a question that we asked the board on Wednesday about that, and there was a response that Domenico Cirillo read out to our question about consultation processes, which he emailed me over the weekend, but said that it was the scrutiny officer role to send out. Robert, were you able to send that out to members? Robert?
Yes, I did that around about half an hour ago.
Okay, fantastic. So you should all have had that answer to that question. Does anybody have anything further that they would like to ask officers in writing after the meeting relating to the Market Town Master Plans?
What one of the things that can come from this is, how is COVID-19 affecting the master plan for the market towns?
That's something we could ask in general, yes. One question I did want to ask, I've had representation from a councillor in a village that is adjacent to one of the market towns for which there was a master plan. And the information there from that councillor was that villages around market towns had not been formally involved in the creation of those master plans. Now, certainly those of us who live in villages around market towns or cities, I live not far from Ely, we are not Ely, but we rely heavily on Ely for much of our services, retail, leisure amenities and everything else. And it would be concerning if we were not consulted and involved in the creation of master plans about market towns on which we rely heavily. And that was a question I wanted to ask, was whether the process sufficiently involved satellite villages and their parishes, which relied on market towns. Does that seem a reasonable question for us to ask? Alex?
Being a Whittlesea Town Councillor as well as a Fenland District Councillor, and I don't live in the towns, I live out in a very remote area, and I can assure you that Whittlesea Town Council did involve all the people in the satellite town villages, which is Turves, Eastry, Coates, Ponders Bridge, in consultation during this master plan proposal. So we did.
Stephen.
Morning, yeah. Just basically say what Alex has just said. Obviously, I'm over at Ramsey, and the villages were fairly well represented on our panel that we put together. And I think we're the same as Alex. We've got 5.5 villages. We share a village with Alex, actually. But yeah, so yeah, we done the same, and I think what we're hoping to do out of this, or get out of this, is something that will benefit all of them as much as the town itself.
Yeah, totally agree.
Right, so there's no particular feeling among you that satellite villages weren't consulted or involved in the creation of their relevant master plans. Is that what I'm getting?
Some may be deficient, but I don't know of any.
Okay. Right. Okay. Climate change, we have a progress report on that. I'm assuming that the timetable that we were originally given is now absolutely for the birds. So we will presumably want to ask how quickly a revised timescale will be able to put together, and whether the way of working of the commission will be affected if we go into, as is being suggested, repeated periods of sort of lockdown and relaxation and lockdown and relaxation in the months and indeed maybe a couple of years to come. What do people feel about questions about the Climate Change Commission? Marcus?
Yeah, I think we shouldn't lose sight, despite the current public health crisis, of the long-term challenge that is climate change. The government hasn't changed its statutory provision to become carbon neutral by 2050. So the combined authority area can't actually afford to let this sort of trundle on for the next 3 years without making any preparations, because that would not just endanger our current transport strategy, it would endanger our businesses. And I think that's a really silly idea. So I'm not fully understanding why we're not making more progress, given that everybody is now working from home. There's a lot of time to consult and answer questionnaires, etc.
Okay, anybody else want to? Alex?
Reading all the paper, the name of the person who's to chair this committee, has that been announced yet, and who the committee are?
No, my understanding was that we had reached a point where there had been a number of potential candidates who were going to be interviewed, but that those interviews have not taken place for obvious reasons. The names of the candidates have not been publicised, again, for obvious reasons. And that my understanding is that work on this is now on pause, not least because the successful candidate would be engaged and involved in the appointment of the commissioners.
Does this basically suspend the programme for the moment, or indefinitely, or is the light at the end of the tunnel where a commission will be appointed?
I don't think those two are mutually exclusive, are they? I mean, I think that my understanding is that there is a suspension of the process, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a light at the end of the tunnel, if that makes sense.
Well, yes, it does. It makes sense to a certain extent, but the original remit before COVID came and stuck its ugly head over the parapet, that we will be looking towards the end of the year to have some form of conclusion to this. Is that now out of the window?
I'm going to ask Dermot and then Kevin to speak, but yes, I think that timetable is out of the window. Dermot and then Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. I think firstly, I haven't got any more information this morning than's in the report on the climate change thing, but I think Councillors raised a really important point for questions to the Mayor, which is the Mayor's said that the Combined Authority is open for business. I'm actually in the process of handing over the monitoring officer function to Robert Parkin, but in terms of meetings, we have a mechanism we used on Wednesday in terms of the decisions that the Combined Authority Board would have made. In broad terms, that can be adapted for the executive committees. We do anticipate local legislation on virtual meetings sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So I think broadly, the Combined Authority should be able to get on with whatever needs to be got on with, whether it's major projects, climate change commission, and so forth. I think where the issue will be, and it's, I say, leave it to members how far they want to ask the Mayor about this, is that there's an issue about how if people become poorly and your workforce shrinks because people are poorly or looking after poorly relatives, that there's a sort of business continuity issue behind there. But in terms of actual practicality, the decision making can continue as long as there's the people available to make the decisions. Does that make sense, Chair? Sorry.
Yep. Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a thought, really. Given that we're doing this, is it not possible to carry out interviews doing this effectively? If, as we suspect, we will be given permission to hold meetings at some point very soon, surely the same could apply. It's not ideal, but then nothing at the moment is ideal. But we should be able to conduct interviews, one would have thought.
Dermot, is there any reason why that should not happen?
No, there's no legal reason. Really, it's just about having an effective selection process. As Councillor Gearing said, it's important stuff, it's urgent, it needs to be got on with. So I think it's fairly legitimate question to ask the Mayor to say, is the Combined Authority going to use appropriate electronic means to progress its business, including recruiting chairs of climate commissions, just to get the reassurance really that this committee is probably looking for, which is that that the Combined Authority is open for business, that nothing's stuck just because of COVID. I say the business continuity is the one on my mind, but generally it's as Councillor Price says, the Combined Authority should presumably be using all the tools at its disposal to carry on with its business as close to normal as possible.
Right. Okay. Then the next item on our agenda is Wisbech Rail Project, which is a progress report. Is there anything that we can usefully say or do on that? Anything we want to ask officers offline about that? No, I don't think so, really. I mean, I think it's just one of those wait and see things, isn't it? Yeah. Then we've got the Combined Authority Board agenda, which is coming up. Dermot, we were told on Wednesday that the board would be having another virtual meeting in April. Is that the reserve date of, I think, the 29th of April, or is there another date set for that?
I think that's uncertain at the moment, Chair. I think the issue was that, and I'll try and spare members the full legal horror, but there's some decisions that the Mayor can't make,
yes,
as with his general power of competence, and effectively it's matters which involve allocation of transport spending.
Right.
So, we really do need the legislation for that, because there's a problem with officers making them as well. So it may well be we want an intermediate meeting so that we can crack on with transport business. But I'm afraid I haven't got the definitive answer because that's dependent upon the legislation coming through.
Indeed, but then that gives us an opportunity as an overview and scrutiny committee to hold an informal, if the legislation hasn't come through by then, Zoom meeting like this, or alternatively devise some questions by email.
Yeah. So just to remind members, so although the Mayor's decision making isn't a Combined Authority Board meeting, the Mayor did deal with the questions that you were put together as a committee remotely, and I'm sure we should continue doing that, and that the Mayor would continue to answer those questions.
Okay, thank you. Marcus.
Lorna, could I suggest that if there's an emergency meeting, especially on transport spending, that we try to schedule an emergency overview and scrutiny committee on the Monday before, right? Because I think it's all good to move our meeting, but in a way, the scrutiny needs to happen before the board meets, not after the fact.
Yeah, yeah. Right, I'm trying to move us on because I'm conscious the Mayor will be with us in a couple of minutes. Our own work programme, we'll have to wait and see. I don't think there's anything in particular to raise on that at the moment. We'll just have to do what we can with the tools we have. The call-in is the one thing I wanted to say briefly. That there are, I think, we can't deal with the call-in today, but I think there might be some questions, quite a lot of questions that we might want to ask. And I wonder whether we could, by email, devise a set of questions that we might have wanted to ask as part of the call-in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does anybody have any? Kevin?
Just given that we can't deal with the call-in today, does it still hold because we've asked it, or is it's got a sell-by date and we will have passed it? Because that seems to me, under normal circumstances, yes, of course, I get that. If you haven't met and you haven't dealt with it, tough. But this is not because we are not meeting or not willing to meet. This is because we're not being allowed to. So
correct.
That I just think that should remain.
Dermot, can you advise on the legal position?
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I do take a different view that what we have at the moment is a request for call-in. So we would have had a debate today with the committee. then a decision would be made as to whether to proceed with the call-in. Because we can't have a sort of valid meeting, we can't do that, and the call-in will then fall. Where that leaves the committee is using the other tools in its toolkit to try and get answers to those questions. Equally, I think there may be an opportunity going forward to the next Transport and Infrastructure Committee, again based on the virtual meetings legislation, as to how Scrutiny asks questions there to try and tease out the same issues that were of concern to the members that signed the request for the call-in. So I'm afraid the call-in does fall, and then I can't call a meeting of, well, it's a whole chain of things I can't do, but even if I could call a meeting of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee and there was virtual legislation for it, it's the call-in's fallen. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, Kevin.
And presumably can't be resubmitted.
No, Chair, the timetable's fairly clear that you have to do it within so many days of the decision summary being published. You've got sort of 10 days there, another 10 to call the meeting. So I think if I can try and help members, it's more about how to get the answers in a different way at the moment. It's how to explore those issues and get answers, but outside of the formal calling process.
Okay. Right, thanks. Are we now ready for the Mayor, it now being 10:30?
No, Lorna, I'd like to say something on the call-in.
Okay.
I really can't believe that the call-in should fall in these circumstances, and somebody really, I haven't got time to look at the Constitution and I haven't got time to look at the law, but the law would not envisage a situation that in an emergency the call-in would just fall by the wayside. There must be some provision in law for the circumstance that arises at the moment, that is, it's an emergency where for various reasons the committee can't make the formal decision within the required time. It can't be the fact that it just falls. As I say, the law must make some provision for this. I just haven't got time to look at it, but I cannot believe that that's actually, with respect, the correct interpretation of the legal position. But that's my position on it.
Well, thank you, Jocelyn. I'm afraid I'm not a lawyer, and we are in the hands of the lawyers who advise us. I don't think we can presume to overrule their advice, and I have no indication from anybody in writing to suggest that the position is anything other than has been outlined by Dermot. We are in somewhat unprecedented times here, and we're having to deal as best we can with what we have, unfortunately.
Well, I just repeat that really has to be looked at. That there, as I say, there must be legal precedent for it. There can't not be legal precedent for this sort of circumstance arising. It's not as if it's something that's never arisen before. And therefore, as I say, I just don't have time to look at it. And if that's the position of the officers, then that's the position of the officers. But I really have to register my dissent from that position. As I say, I just don't have time to look at it. I've got other things to do.
Indeed. Okay, Dermot.
I quite understand Councillor Scott's concerns, Chair. I think all I would say that the sort of legal answer is actually the legislation we're waiting for. Yeah. That's the route out of this, but perhaps understandably the government's got other things it's doing first, I presume.
Yeah, I'm as frustrated as anyone, Jocelyn, believe me. Are we ready for Mayor Palmer now?
Yes.
Right.
I'll just say something quickly, Chair. So if members click on the participants, they can see who's in the meeting, and that includes Mr. Mayor. We haven't got a full set of members, but I think that's just the way it is. It's an informal meeting at the moment. It's not the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's just the Mayor making himself available to deal with any issues that members may have. So it is very informal at this point.
Okay, thank you. Well, in that case, welcome, Mayor Palmer.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. I think before we ask any specific questions, perhaps would you be able to give us an overview in broad terms of the response to date of the Combined Authority to COVID-19 and the effect of COVID-19 on the authority's plans and programs?
Yeah, so just very briefly, obviously the Combined Authority is not a health authority. Its main function is growth and business growth. And so whilst we are supportive of the work that's going on across the county with regards to health solution, that is the responsibility at the moment of the team that's being led by Gillian Beasley, and we're happy to have input into that. Certainly the response that we have put forward has been a business support response, and using our ability to, of our database of 6,000 businesses across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, we've been in contact with them, offering support and signposting to the government's support packages. Clearly, we're all aware that ultimately this response is the response is being led centrally and nationally by the government, and of course we've all seen the packages that have been put in place to support business. However, it is my view that the Combined Authority must put itself in a position to try and make sure business can move forward post COVID-19, and that's certainly where our focus is and where our focus is going to be.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just going on to the other point you made about functionality. Obviously, with modern technology, and we're using it now, the Combined Authority has been able to continue its meeting schedule. You're aware that we held a meeting of the Combined Authority. I think several of you were either took part of it or certainly dialed in to watch it. And thank goodness for Zoom and Team and other applications which allow us to continue our work schedule. Certainly, the team of the Combined Authority are all working very hard on our 17 major projects, as well as being mindful of the response to COVID-19. So whilst I can't say it's business as usual for the Combined Authority, it's business as unusual, but it is business.
Right, okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I think Councillor Gehring, you had a question. Could people who wish to ask a question raise their hands using the raise hand function so that I can then monitor that?
Yes, thank you very much, James. It's good to see that the authority is on the case. I'd like to ask two things. I'm very worried about the next 6 months and the bus services and the bus companies that are operating in the Combined Authority area. We've seen the government taking over temporarily all train operators into government hands. Isn't there a role for the Combined Authority to safeguard some of the vital transport links in the face of this public health crisis? And second of all, you said at the beginning of your intervention that the Combined Authority is not the public health authority. That's quite right. But in these times of crisis, I think we need to ensure that all the businesses in the Combined Authority area are pulling in the same direction and supporting the NHS as much as they can. So what exactly is the Combined Authority doing in order to respond to the requests and needs of the health authority in this area?
Okay, well, I think first of all, your point on bus services is very valid, Marcus, and I've been involved in a couple of ways already. First of all, I was approached by several of the bus companies who were running contracts for the county council on school services, who were very worried that their contracts were not going to be upheld. And this would have effect in a couple of ways. Many of those very small companies that run the school transport also run small local bus service as well. So it was important, I felt, that they had the confidence that despite the fact that the schools were not going to be there, that they had the confidence that the contracts would be upheld. And I did manage to get the County Council to change their position on that, and then a follow-up letter from the Secretary of State to tell all authorities that they had to uphold their bus contracts 100%. So that was, I think, one thing that we were able to do that gave the bus companies in Cambridgeshire, first of all, confidence that they would be able to continue to employ their members of staff, but secondly, confidence that they would be able to get back to work very easily on the when this problem is all over. I've also, on the back of that, I've had a conversation with Baroness Veer, who is the bus minister. My concern, Marcus, was or is that, and you will all know the disparity between the companies that, the size of companies that run the bus services in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. My concern was that the smaller companies would not be able to get through this, and Stagecoach would then have a complete monopoly over bus services in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And that's something that I've spoken to Baroness Veer about, and about a package that we would need from government to help us help the bus system through this time. I think it's very important that we do support the buses if possible. Unfortunately, I do not have the funds within the combined authority to throw at the bus service, and there are certain amounts of funds that I have to improve the system, but not to keep it going. So we've appealed to government for their help with that, and that work is underway. You'll also be aware, not that it's as relevant now as it was, but initially we also freed up the bus service so that pensioners could get to supermarkets before 9:30 in the morning, whereas previously they were unable to use bus services before 9:30 with their passes. So we have been active, we are being active, and we will continue to be active in trying to make sure that not only does our bus service survive this blip, this issue, but also that it's in a strong position to expand post-COVID-19. I think it's your point about the businesses pulling in the right direction. First of all, we have been signposting, we have been contacted by businesses that make medical equipment in Cambridgeshire, and we have contacted government, and I know that that's brought fruition. I know that people in our area who are working on designing ventilators, and we know that ventilators will be built by companies in this area. So we are doing our bit to make sure that appropriate businesses with appropriate skills base and appropriate equipment are in touch with BEIS and in touch with government, and we will continue to do so. But that work is definitely ongoing here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coles, you indicated.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes,
yep.
Very well.
Very good. Mr. Mayor, thanks very much for attending this virtual meeting. I listened to the board meeting last week, and there was one point that sort of struck me, was the concern of the participants around the ability of elected members to be involved in the emergency planning process, putting an awful lot of burden on our officers to do everything. And I wondered if there had been any plans for the future to ensure that there was leadership and political input into the whole process.
Yeah, I think that is a very important point. We all, as leaders, myself, the MPs, the leaders of the councils, we had a briefing with Gillian Beasley's group on Friday, and obviously there is a significant amount of emergency planning which is in place that officers fall back on to make sure they set up the right kind of services, and that's understandable. But I do think it's important that there is political involvement, because ultimately the decision making, whatever decisions are made, it's the elected members who are responsible for decisions, and clearly I feel it's important that we should have involvement without, of course, getting in the way of what the professionals do. And certainly when it comes to health, as central government have done, I think it's tremendously important that we listen to the experts and let them get on with their job. Equally, I do feel that there is a role for elected members to scrutinise decision making, particularly decision making that may affect the health of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough economy over the next few months. So what I've asked to do is I've asked my chief exec to set up a leaders group that is based around again around the business making decisions of Gillian Beasley's group, and to make sure that we have political scrutiny into that without stress this, without getting in the way of the health response. I think it's tremendously important. I have been, and I'm sure that you all have been, extraordinarily impressed by community volunteers and the way that our communities have reacted. And I see it in my hometown. I know it's happening in villages and towns across the entirety of Cambridge and Peterborough. And that's something that has happened not because of politics, but because of community spirit. And I think it's incredible. And I'm sure that you are all, as I have, engaging or volunteering as and when. But it is important that there is political scrutiny of officers' decisions. And I think in particular, one thing that I was concerned about last week was the decision to stop roadworks in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Now, mindful of clearly the government rules on proximity, etc., it seems to me to be the perfect time to carry out those kinds of work outside when people aren't on the roads and when people aren't people aren't queuing in traffic on a daily basis. So I was concerned that was a decision that was made without the political scrutiny. I'm not saying the decision was wrong, but I was just concerned that it was a decision made without political scrutiny. And I feel it's important that if there are decisions that are made through the group, that there is political scrutiny on.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any other hands raised at the moment. Mayor, can I ask a question about the impact of COVID-19 and the workflow of the Combined Authority on the Climate Change Commission? My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that work on the Climate Change Commission and the appointment of a chair is paused for the moment. Is there any mechanism by which the interviews, which we believe were being set up, could be carried out remotely, as meetings are at the moment, and any way in which the work of the Commission could be progressed virtually? And secondly, presumably there's going to be a necessary impact on the overall timetable. Could you tell us a little bit about your thinking on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we have paused this, and there's good reason for doing so. I think it's a very different thing to have a commission that's set up, or let's say a scrutiny committee that's set up and continue meetings to starting afresh with a whole new system. It doesn't mean to say that work in the background isn't going on with this, but it does mean that at the moment we will not be convening this commission to start during the COVID-19 crisis. But it doesn't mean, as you rightly say, Councillor Dupre, it doesn't mean to say we can't have interviews and we can't talk to people, and clearly we will do. I'm very passionate about making sure that we get this right and getting the right people involved in it. It has to be a commission that looks at the response and what we can practically do in Cambridgeshire, and I think that's tremendously important. So yes, it will affect the timeline of delivery. I'm afraid that's just the way that it is. I would rather it not be the case, but it will. But equally, it's better to get it right and make sure that when it starts, it can start at full pace, rather than to hamper the delivery of what I hope will be a report with the same quality as the independent economic review.
You said that there was work going on in the background on this. Could you tell us what that work is?
Well, this is the officer work on making sure we get the right people into the commission and setting up. So that work continues and will continue. But I don't believe, certainly in the short term, next 2 to 3 weeks, it isn't a priority for the combined authority. It is a high priority of mine, but I think in the short term, during the COVID-19 crisis, it isn't a priority at this time. It is the priority to make sure that we get on with the work that we have in front of us. But I assure you, Councillor De Prey, and I assure every member of the Scrutiny Committee that it is something of extreme importance to me, and I think extreme importance to Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, that this commission is formed, it is fully briefed, and it is has the independence to deliver the quality and standard of work that we hope and expect from it.
Okay, thank you. I see hands raised from Councillors Price and Goering, and I'll take them in that order. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, James.
Morning, Kevin.
Just to be clear, you said we can conduct interviews. Is can meaning that we will conduct those interviews for the chair of that panel?
Well, if the right person comes along and agrees to be interviewed, then there's absolutely no reason why that can't happen. You know, there's one thing that, you know, I've been very, very impressed, and I'm sure that you all have been, by the quality of discussion that can be held over this kind of device and or this kind of platform. So ultimately, if it's set up and the meeting goes ahead, then it certainly will be able to be conducted successfully, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Goering.
Yeah, I'd like to press the issue. I don't mind if it's on hold for 2 or 3 weeks, but we were told in the December meeting that by January we would have the entire commission in place. And now we're pushing on to April. Isn't it true, James, that you haven't found a competent chair yet, and that you're struggling to find anyone who will endorse the lackluster actions that the combined authority is taking on the climate issue?
I don't think it's a question of, you know, I totally reject the lackluster point of view. I think in actual fact, we're completely opposite to that. Lackluster thing to do would just be to sit back, put a feet on the sofa and just pick up any information that's coming along without any scrutiny of it whatsoever. You know, this is something that I think will be an exceptional piece of work, and I think that if done properly, I think certainly other authorities will try to copy what we're trying to achieve. But you know, people aren't queuing up around the country to take on the very difficult job of being chairman of this kind of commission. It is something that requires a significant skill set. It will, no doubt, Marcus, it will no doubt be something that's scrutinised very intensely, and rightly so. So, you know, I reject, you know, that this is again, I will reject this is a lacklustre response. I think it's an extraordinarily strong response, and I think the right thing to do is for me as mayor to say, I want the best possible information, I want the best possible response for the environment for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and I don't feel at the moment that we have that at our fingertips to allow us to deliver what is an extremely ambitious combined authority agenda.
Right, thank you. Can I just ask for clarity? Absolutely, Mayor, on this. My understanding, my information was that there were a number of candidates who had been set up for interview by yourself and one of the joint chief executives. Do we have candidates currently in place waiting to be interviewed, or do we have no candidates yet in place waiting to be interviewed?
We do have candidates, but I don't know if I have to say, I'm not sure if they're waiting to be interviewed, but we do have candidates. As I said, other things over the last 2 to 3 weeks have taken precedent over this, and at the moment are taking precedent over this, but it doesn't mean to say that that will be the case. And as I said earlier, the combined authority's business is carrying on, and we will continue to do whatever we can to make sure that we get the right people in place for this commission.
Right. I don't see any other raise hands on my participants list, but I do see a physical hand raised by Councillor Miscandlin.
Thank you. Morning, James.
Morning.
Bearing in mind that we're now using this wonderful new technology of virtual meetings, and you've already stated you have a number of candidates available or in the pipeline, whereas a virtual interview would, and I'm not going to use this disparagingly, weed out the less appropriate candidates for positions on that committee. Do you think that would be an advantage?
Well, I think the same as everything, Alex, is when you sit down and talk to people, you find out more about them, and that's exactly what we will do at the appropriate time. I don't think that. I think I'll turn that around. I don't think the platform is a disadvantage.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands at the moment wanting to ask about coronavirus related issues in their broadest sense. Is there anything else in the remaining few minutes that people would like to ask the Mayor about anything else? And if so, can you use the raise hand function on your Zoom screen? Nothing else?
I've got Ed Murphy furiously waving at me.
Councillor Murphy raising a physical hand rather than a virtual hand.
Yeah, that's probably because I joined an hour late. Sorry.
Right. Okay. Well, did you want to ask something non-COVID related of the Mayor?
Sorry, I was going to ask COVID. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. Can I ask a COVID one?
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. Good. Good morning. Sorry, I joined you late. I didn't realise we were starting an hour early. So there we go. But I'm here now. Can I just ask what the ability might be, if need be, to move some of our capital resources into revenue to help with the emergency? I understand the local authorities are not necessarily short of resources, but that may not be the case as things go on.
Well, an age-old question, Councillor Murphy, as you're fully aware, it isn't the way the Combined Authority is set up is a capital funder, and we do not have massive amounts of revenue to throw around. Equally, if there is an emergency situation, we will talk to government and we will see if we can free up finance in that situation. As I said earlier, and I appreciate you weren't online at the time, Councillor Murphy, what we know is the finances of this response, or the finances for the response, are certainly being handled by Treasury and national government. And whilst we are able to invest in certain areas and we are able to do some business support things, and we've been discussing those this morning with Mr. Adams, who's online. We haven't been requested by businesses to step in, because clearly that's where government are at the moment. So as was mentioned in the Combined Authority Board last week, if there is a situation where we have capital that can be invested and we need to turn it into revenue, that is a discussion that we will have to have with the Treasury at the time. But as we're aware, this is a national response.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, we are now joined by Austin Adams. Thank you, Austin, for joining us. I'm not sure that we can make as much use of your esteemed presence as we might otherwise have been able to, but with the consent of the meeting and contrary to what I've just suggested to Dermot, would the meeting find it helpful if Austin told us a bit about what's going on the business side? So that, and thank you very much, Mayor Palmer. I think that we're, thank you very much for taking the questions. Do members feel that they would want to hear briefly from Austin about the business side of things and COVID in particular? Would that be helpful?
Very helpful, Lorna.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then perhaps if anybody has any specific questions for Austin, we can take those. So thank you, Mayor Palmer, and Austin, welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning. We are in informal session, I think, still, and our formal meeting is cancelled because we have no legal powers unless they've come through in the last couple of minutes to proceed on a formal footing.
All righty. My sincere apologies. My meeting paper said 11 o'clock, so...
No, we've been having a pre-meeting and we're still in that pre-meeting in a sense, but we are not able to meet formally at 11, which would have been the formal meeting, because we have no power to meet formally. So in a sense, what we're doing here is an informal meeting with no decisions being taken on anything, and just a chance for an informal catch up, firstly with Mayor Palmer and now with yourself, if you're happy to proceed on that basis.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. So let me deal with two separate issues. In terms of just a general update on where we are with the business board and what shape we're in. And then happy to flip back to the coronavirus and what's going on there and current thoughts, and happy to take any questions. In terms of the business board, there was a paper circulated for the formality of the meeting, which I think is pretty comprehensive in terms of dealing with the annual performance review, just a rear view mirror look at improvements that were identified a year ago and what progress has been made over the last year to effect those improvements. I think it's fair to say generally on all three counts, which is significant in that performance review, governance, delivery and strategy, very, very good progress has been made on all fronts. I won't go through all the twists and turns of the detail. It's well set out in the paper. But just to touch on some of the highlights, from a governance point of view, we've added 7 new members to the board. We're fully compliant now in terms of gender diversity and some of the other requirements that we have there. From a personal point of view, I took up the mantle of the interim chair and subsequently rolled into the full-time chair, and have steered us through this period of adding the new members. And I have to say, we have an outstanding board. The quality of the people that came forward when we went out to market to find those 7 people is quite breathtaking. We went through a lengthy process to get the people in place. That's all complete now. We're also in good shape in terms of getting those people very quickly through an induction process to make them aware of all of the compliance issues and the rules. Bear in mind, we're largely all business people, so we do get somewhat frustrated with some of the bureaucracy and the hoops that quite rightly we have to go through. But everyone is very much aware of quite how that works and what the requirements are. So I think we're in very good shape on governance. In terms of delivery, this is an area where I think we're somewhat disadvantaged, given that we almost had an 18-month period due to the difficulties of the former LEP and taking that apart and reconstructing it. We're a little bit behind the curve. However, it's certainly in the last 6 months, we've catched up dramatically, particularly in terms of putting to good use the funding that's available under the Local Growth Fund. We implemented a process, a 4-tier process to take projects, to review them by officers. We set up then almost a dragon's den arrangement with members of the business board and other invited parties to sit in judgment and listen carefully to what was being proposed and what was being asked for. So we really got a good sense of not only the mechanics of what was required, but the hearts and minds and the passion that people had to deliver on their projects. Then ultimately, of course, we've got the business board's approval and the accountable body's approval of the combined authority. Notwithstanding the challenges of going through all those hoops, we're now in a position where of the 146 million of funding to be deployed, we've approved almost all of that. There are a number of projects now just to finalise in terms of dotting I's and crossing T's on contracts. But we should be in a position in very short order where all of that is on contract, and notwithstanding the current difficulties of the coronavirus issues, we're good to go to get those projects delivered. There's a lot more focus, I think, from the business board, being business orientated people, on measuring the results and the outcome. And this is the area where maybe we're a little bit behind the curve given the delays in terms of meeting the BEI's requirements in terms of their metrics. And we may well fall a little short on some of their requirements. Nevertheless, I think the business board are extremely confident that we will catch up and overtake that position in fairly short order. One of the frustrations with the business board is the measurement system itself. It's very prescriptive and it's very much outcome based. Some of the investments that we're making today are very long cycle investments. We won't see the benefit for a reasonable period of time. So the business board are keen to work on understanding what are the leading indicators that will give us a better sense of surety that the outcomes will ultimately be delivered. The third area is strategy. And I think we probably, of all of the 38 LEPs in the UK, we're probably up there with the best of them in terms of the strategy. We had the benefit of taking the time out to do the sphere report, so we've got a really, really good, solid scientific understanding of the landscape that we're working within. Taken the time to develop a very comprehensive industrial strategy from which we can derive the actions and we can prioritise all of the relative investments to make sure that all of that is properly aligned, very logical, and will deliver the results.
Okay.
The strategy is very, in terms of the industrial strategy, very much a constantly evolving thing, and no doubt as time goes by, we will continue to review that and recycle and readjust accordingly as time goes by, and we learn new things. That's where we are with the business board, I think. Happy to take any questions on that particular point, and then I'll touch on some of the corona issues.
Okay, thank you. I mean, as I said at the outset, we are in informal session, and in governance terms and for the record, it might be necessary for us to ask you to present that to us formally at the next or a future meeting. And I'm in the hands of Dermot and Robert Fox as our officers for any advice they may have to give us on that process, but I'll pick that up at the end. And in the meantime, I'll ask whether there are any members who have any questions about anything that Austin has said, to use the raise hand function on their screens to indicate that they wish to speak, as indeed Councillor Gehring has already done. So, Councillor Gehring.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Adams, for this this report. At one of the last board meetings, we had an approval to collaborate with other labs that are sort of in the surrounding areas. So my first question is, how are you collaborating? How are you sort of exchanging information with all the other labs? Do you need more formalized arrangements in order to sort of collaborate? And second of all, do you have an approximate sort of idea how the project money that you most recently allocated has been distributed? There's some of my residents in Cambridge are very concerned that a lot of the business board projects happen far away in other parts of the combined authority and not necessarily in Cambridge City. And thirdly, do we know how the books are going to be reviewed and the auditing is going to be conducted, given that our auditors are, are behind by a year and a half? So when will the first full audit of the business board finances will it be conducted? Thank you.
All right, let's try and wrestle with some of those. In terms of collaboration, there are a couple of things going on. One, there's a peer-to-peer review underway, albeit recently cancelled meetings over the last week or so, given the current circumstances. But a very definite intent to try and learn from each other, best practices, what's worked well. One of the great frustrations, actually, as a business board, when we've been looking at investment decisions, is you can't easily get to see what the other LEPs have invested in and what the outcomes have been as a benchmark to categorise what's good, bad and indifferent. Certainly that's something we've spoken a number of times to Bays around to get a better understanding of that. But it seems that there isn't a formal mechanism to share that. So we rely very much then on informal mechanisms. We're keen to learn from the business board stroke LEPs that have been very, very successful. We do meet periodically through the LEP network. I've been to a couple of meetings with the LEP chairs and or some of the chief execs over the last 4 months or so. I would have to say, generally, there's probably limited opportunity to learn from all of them. That there are one or two very, very specific ones doing quite discrete pieces of work that we could latch onto and learn more from, and we're very, very keen to do that. But they do operate generally in isolation in terms of their own plans. Now, we're unique, of course, in being a combined authority, so that sets a somewhat different set of rules for us compared to some of the others. Some of that is to our advantage, of course. But yes, you know, the whole collaborative piece is something we're keen to do more and more and more of. The business board are business-minded people, and certainly when we're looking at business decisions, the first thing we're interested in understanding is, has this been done before? Was it successful, and what were the outcomes? So an inability nationally to do that, you can imagine, is very, very frustrating, but we're working on that. In terms of the diversity of the projects and their geographical spread, you know, one of the things that we look very carefully at when we're evaluating the projects is their economic output. Their geography is not really that great a criteria. If we've got a plethora of very high value projects in one particular area, then I'm not sure that would necessarily knock them out. The projects are evaluated against a number of set criteria. And I can't honestly recall having a discussion that says, here's a great project, but it's in Cambridge, so we're not going to do that. That just is not how it operates. We have been blessed with a number of very high quality projects around other areas of the patch, out in the fens, in some of the market towns. I'm in Chatteris just now. We've got 3 projects all in one little cluster in Chatteris. We've got a number of projects in Peterborough, and I think it's right and appropriate that we get a reasonable blend ultimately of these things across the piece, but there's no particular intent to disadvantage any one area, not at all in the selection criteria. And sorry, your third question, just to remind me.
Just on the books, given that the LEP was taking into the combined authority because of dodgy financial dealings, we need to be cleaner than clean, right? We need to be angels when it comes to accountability, finances, spending, even the sort of backdating of chairpersons' money is sort of borderline in the eyes of my constituents. So how are we securing the sort of clean bill of A, financial health, and B, auditing, financial auditing?
Yeah. You know, I couldn't comment on where we are in terms of audit and what the timescales are for that. I would happily take that away and come back to you. I can tell you that, you know, the business board are business-minded people, and they all work in an environment where compliance, notwithstanding, you know, the additional layer of public scrutiny here, is fundamental to what they do and how they operate.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I don't see any other hands. I see Councillor Miss Scanlon. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I think what the committee are not understanding, and from the last question from Marcus, is that it is a combined authority for the whole area. And I understand his frustration at his constituents wanting everything done in their area, but the combined authority is for the whole area, not just his area.
Right, okay, thank you for that. Alex, I think, have we lost Alex? Right, can you hear me, everybody?
I can, yes.
Yeah, okay, grand. I think it's just Alex that we appear to have lost momentarily, if I see right on my screen. Okay, does it, in moving on then, Austin, would you like to tell us a little bit about COVID then, which you were reserving comment on for the moment?
Yes, indeed. So forgive me, some of this you may have already covered with James perhaps, but in essence, well, let me just go up 35,000 feet from a business point of view. One of the things we recognise is that there are already a plethora of very short cycle, hard hitting financial incentives being put in place, or financial initiatives being put in place by government to help with the very short cycle, short, sharp shock issues that businesses are having to deal with. Recognizing that, you know, there is not a great deal of use that can be delivered in trying to compete with that with alternate opportunities and or mechanisms to help companies. In fact, I think it would just create a more confusing picture if we were to try and deal with some of the, you know, very short cycle issues. I can speak from my own personal experience. I run 7 manufacturing facilities in the UK, 2 of them on our patch here. And whilst it's difficult sometimes to work your way through understanding the rules as they've been developed and evolved over time, the help is definitely there in financial terms. So, you know, one of our immediate priorities beyond digitising the manner in which the combined authority operates, which I think testament to the fact that we're having this meeting in the manner that we are, is a job well done so far. In terms of short-term response for business, it's all about signposting, getting people to the right advice very quickly. And in that respect, resources have been refocused away from the Growth Hub and the business, the Brexit readiness team to help to do that. So people know precisely where to go for the right kind of information to get the help that is already available to them. There are then a number of other things which can help in more medium, longer term. But what we're really interested in is getting businesses in a position where when the brakes do come off, and thankfully we turn a corner on this wretched situation, that businesses are able to react very quickly to the growth opportunities that are in front of them and get back to full steam and capitalise on what opportunities might come as a result of that. In that respect then, the business board put a paper together to identify a number of things that we might be able to do to oil the wheels there. Examples being offering interest accruing repayment holidays for people with local growth fund loans, adjustment to the terms and conditions upon which small capital grant schemes can be offered for people that want to go and invest in plant equipment and capability to capitalise on things. There were a number of opportunities that we discussed, some of which we struggle with in terms of the assurance framework that we have to work within. But nevertheless, there are things that can be done within that can help get these businesses into a better position as we start to come through the recovery phase. And I think, it's very much work in progress. There are new ideas. Literally, a great idea came out this morning for consideration on helping a small subset of particularly innovative businesses that are focused potentially on delivering very high growth in the long term, that just don't quite make the hurdle rate for some of the short-term government initiatives, and whether there's anything that can be done to help those. So there's a constant dialogue ongoing between the officers, the members of the business board, James, myself, and others, to work through anything that we can get our teeth into that can help beyond the immediate short-term government response, particularly with clarification and signposting.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, Austin. My feeling is that there are a lot of companies and individuals who are falling between the cracks in government announcements and government help on all of this. Are you finding that, and to what extent are you finding that there are businesses and individuals for whom the criteria and circumstances around the government help offers don't actually fit?
I think the challenge is that some of the rules around some of the initiatives that have been put forward are still work in progress. From my own personal point of view, understanding the furlough process and where that does and does not apply is a constant source of debate. In fact, we're working very carefully and closely with Make UK, who've been very helpful in trying to collate a broad spectrum of manufacturing companies' concerns to feed those into government, and slowly but surely we've seen those come back out. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to come across as being critical in that respect. Government have actually moved very, very quickly to try and put these things in place, and it's inevitable that in doing so they couldn't have possibly thought through all the twists and turns and the angles and the what ifs. And so, we're going through that process just at the moment of understanding what all the what ifs are, teasing out all the outlying scenarios, and then addressing the advice accordingly. And I think we'll continue to see that. Certainly on the furloughing process, further advice came out on Friday, and I think that will continue to be refined during the course of this week.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not sure whether we have Councillor Miscandlin back or not. His picture has emerged, but he appears to be somewhat frozen, and I'm not sure whether that's a natural attitude or whether it's a problem with the technology, which was actually something that my second point I was going to raise with you. And members, by the way, please use raise hand if you wish to ask Austin anything about what he said COVID related. My second question was going to be, one of the big issues that has emerged out of all of this, I think, and will do into the future, is the huge uptick in use of virtual meeting technology and online meetings of various kinds. Not just for meetings, but also for leisure. I mean, we've seen some of the big providers of online streaming services actually reducing their bit rates in order to avoid things being problematic for everyone. This what this seems to me to demonstrate is kind of the underinvestment, perhaps, but certainly fragility of broadband and online services, and the huge demand that I think will continue to be there long after the immediate COVID crisis is over, and may in fact be a preferred way of working now for many organizations, which would have huge environmental benefits as well, but needs, it seems to me, a much greater investment in and stability of internet and broadband provision. Is that something you're able to comment on, or indeed to press for at national level?
Yeah, I think you spot on, Lorna. Don't they say necessity is the mother of invention? Certainly, I mean, you know, from my point of view, I run a network of businesses and spend an awful lot of time and money traveling around. And of course, we've all used video conferencing over the years, and we've all used and had mixed experiences, no doubt, with that. It used to be very, very expensive and very fickle. Moving on then to conference calls and to this kind of technology where we can hold a virtual meeting. This is the third such meeting I've been involved in the last week or so. And I struggle now to think, well, why would we want to travel people around to have these kind of meetings? You know, the cost, the time, the environmental impact. I think, you know, if there's one good thing that comes out of it, this whole situation will certainly be an improved understanding of the utilization of this kind of technology, for one. And no doubt, we'll learn what the constraints are over time as well. I mean, you mentioned the slowdown in the network. We have had issues over the last week where we just could not get onto conference calls because it just was not the available line speeds to run those calls. Zoom does seem to work particularly well, more so than general conference calls. So, you know, will that drive further stimulus around investing in the 5G network so we don't rely on the cables more so? So on and so forth. Well, let's hope so, because the benefits are clear to be seen.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hay, I see your hand up.
Hello, Lorna. Just wanted to tell you, Alex has just been on the line. His internet keeps on dropping out, so he sends his apologies.
How
very apt, yes.
Right, okay, yes, very apt indeed. Thank you, Anne, for that. Does anybody have anything else they wanted to raise with Austin on the COVID issues then, at the moment, informally? No, I don't see anybody. Right, okay, thank you very much indeed for joining us, Austin. That's really very much appreciated. We may need to ask you to do all of that formally, you know, again, for us, so we can put things on the record, but thank you for that.
Okay, no trouble.
All right, okay. Okay, members, I think in view of our discussion at our pre-meeting, insofar as it was a pre-meeting as opposed to this, that we are now pretty much at the limits of what we can do. I'm wondering about the call-in and the extent to which we can pursue that offline by email with anything. I mean, we've been given advice about the status of the call-in from Dermot, or the request for call-in, I should say, and whether there are any other questions that arise out of that for the decision that was made, and whether we can take that to email and devise between us a set of further questions, if any, that we would wish to ask in the light of that. Does that seem a reasonable thing to do? Yeah, happy with that. In that case, I'm not sure that there's anything else that we can do this morning. So in terms of the next meeting, I think we are, to an extent, we've heard from Mayor Palmer that there is not yet a date set for the next meeting of the board. And given that situation, Can I therefore suggest that it would be advisable for us to wait to set our own meeting date or revise our own meeting date until we are clearer what the board is doing for maximum effect in terms of being able to input into the board process? Does that make sense? Yeah? So we will wait to hear. Okay, in that case, I don't think there's much more to be done. So was that a hand? Oh, that was a hand raise from Councillor Hay, and then I'll ask Robert to say something as well. Anne.
Robert is probably going to say the same as me. We are having a bus reform task and finish group meeting following on.
Okay.
Meeting. So I'll just remind people who belong to that task group to stay on.
Yes, we don't want everybody disappearing again.
Exactly what I was going to say. So
fantastic.
It's just Councillors Hay, Chamberlain. I don't think Councillor Connor's with us, is he?
No.
Councillor Murphy is a substitute if he wishes to participate.
Fabulous. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to officers for helping to make this run as smoothly as I think it's run. I hope you agree that it's been useful today. And we will leave the bus group to get on with it. So thank you very much all. Thank you.
Thank you to thank you very much to Lorna for setting it all up. Much appreciated.
To the officers for setting it all up. I just sat on top of it. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Well done, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye.
Robert, can I just check? Can I change you to the host now then?
Yes, Tamar, no problem.
I'll change you to the host.
Yeah. Thanks for doing that, Tamar.
That's all right.
That's all very well. I have a fleet.
South Cams is looking very nice this morning, Councillor Chamberlain. I don't know what part you're in, but
you can put a background on, and that's a site that we visited in northern India last year.
Ah, right.
Robert, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We could not see you.
Yeah, I know. I've had this before with Zoom. For some reason, there's obviously something I'm doing that's not correct. But there I am.
There you are.
I've suddenly appeared. I think the purpose of us meeting here today, if you don't mind me speaking first, is just to kind of clarify where we're at and set something aside that we can actually put something together to report to the April meeting of overview and scrutiny, which currently is due to be 27th of April, but as the chair just said there, that might be a movable feast. But we do need to report to the committee at the end of April with the report of the task and finish group. I've put some stuff together from the previous meetings. Obviously, I was only at the last meeting, but I'm thinking this hiatus, if you like, is giving us the opportunity whereby we could actually meet perhaps almost weekly to put something together and invite officers in to contribute to the task and finish group, run things by them that have already been given as evidence by officers, and just to take the thing forward.
That to me sounds a good idea, Robert. I don't know how Grenville you feel, or Ed, would you be able to?
Absolutely fine.
Come on once a week?
Yeah, I would just once a week, yeah. And maybe if we can get the right officers, and there's something obviously we can discuss today as well, which officers you'd like to get some more information from, or which other outside agencies you'd like to get some more information from, then we can set them up on a kind of weekly basis. And I mean, if there's any particular dates that suit you all as well, I mean, Monday mornings, if that's great, then we'll go with that. But
Monday mornings would be fine by me. What about you, Grenville? Ed?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Then.
Ed, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Okay, yeah. I'm basically observing today. Just check with the main member if they can attend. If not, I'll
Yeah.
try and substitute on a Monday, but I won't be contributing a lot. I'll really just be listening because you guys have been doing all the work.
Righto then. Well, it's nice to know that you can at least substitute. I'll contact Councillor Connor because unfortunately he hasn't been for past 2 or 3 meetings, and I'll try and get some commitment from him to come in next week. I think Monday morning would probably be a good idea. Grenville, you're all right with Monday morning?
Yeah, absolutely fine now. No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
if Councillor Connor by default is falling off, then I'll try and carry on on his
that would
behalf.
be good,
Right?
Ed. I think the truth be known, Councillor Connor is not very up on social media and digital meetings, so to speak. So I'll try and get onto him and tell him how easy it is.
So from my point of view, councillors, it would be really good to know if there's any particular officers or agencies that you would like to invite to future meetings. I've put together I haven't sent it to you as yet, but I've put together a kind of draft where we are at currently kind of paper,
Yes.
which I can send to you this afternoon. Give you the chance to have a look at that before next Monday. But if there are any officers that you feel that they're come to your mind right now, I can write them down. It might be that you'd prefer to see the paper first and then fill in the gaps from that.
Can I say, sorry, can I say at the last meeting we had, I felt that was one of the most informative meetings we did have. And it put forward some timescales, which obviously needs to go in the final report.
And of course, some of these timescales are now affected by COVID-19. So, I mean, it would be useful perhaps to have an update from Oliver around what's going to happen sort of during and post COVID-19, particularly as the Mayor said, the concern about some of the smaller operators going out of business and ending up with a stagecoach monopoly.
Yeah. So probably Oliver might be the first one we want to hear from next week.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll email him this afternoon. But what I'll do also this afternoon, as I say, I'll send you the paper I've put together, the kind of position statement where we're at, and that will give you the opportunity to review that and see where the gaps are that you wish to fill in.
Yeah, that would be good. And Grenville, if you when you receive it, if you could also keep in contact with any queries you've got on that.
Yeah, of course.
So we can put them forward before next week, and you, Ed, as well, so that we can have the answers next week if there's anything we're not sure about.
With pleasure. The thing that concerns me most, I think, is my wife and I generally go out for an hour's walk every morning while we're stuck here. And the thing that I see more than any are completely empty buses. We're on a fairly rural service here, the City 4 from Camborne to Cambridge. I don't think in the last 4 days I've seen a single passenger. Now, if that is happening to smaller companies, then there is a real risk that very quickly we're going to see some of them fail.
Can I chip in, Councillor Hay? Is that okay?
Yes, by all means.
So this is a sort of up on the government's radar. So we've already had a government practice note on what they're calling supply chains that does touch on anybody who's providing services to local government in the meantime, and the importance of keeping them paid even in circumstances where they may not be able to provide the service that they should be because of COVID. There's then been some more recent correspondence from Grant Shapps MP about buses specifically. There's some work been going on with the other combined authorities legal teams just to get into the issues around this particular issue of making sure that these bus services are supported so that they're not lost in the meantime, so that at the point where we eventually get to the other side of COVID, that you've got a viable bus system and as Robert said, a sort of range of providers. So would it be helpful if Robert just got one of our transport colleagues just to bring you up to date on that in your task and finish crew. It's slightly to one side of the bus review, but the risk is that if you just focus too heavily on the bus review strategy, it's sort of wood for the trees, isn't it? If this is a key issue.
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah. So I can reassure members, you know, it's a high priority with government. I think the mayor mentioned as well he'd had a conversation with the buses minister, but it might be just helpful if someone, perhaps Oliver, perhaps one of his colleagues, could just pull together something for you next time that just says, here is the government's response and the CPCA's response to what's going on with buses.
Yep, no, that's a good idea. Right, does anyone else have anything they want to put forward?
Yeah, it's just Ed. As an aside to our business, people have talked about buses at the moment. In Peterborough, we have RAM buses. They're private buses taking workers to factories, and they're a health hazard. I just want to clarify for councillors, basically the buses are still devolved to the County Council and Peterborough Unitary Authority. The combined authority never took them over. So it's your gold and silver commanders at county level who will be trying to sort out what goes on at the moment. And I think they should be practical, and they should put in alternative or reduced services, whether it's their own community transport system in the rural areas, and build it up now as best they can. And that transport levy, which is £760,000 for Peterborough and a lot more for the county, should be there for the for the unitary authority and the county council to use and administer. I don't think officers of the combined authority will be dealing with the practicalities of keeping buses going where they ought to and need to go.
Right, thank you for that, Ed. I was under the impression that the combined authority were the responsible people for buses. Am I wrong, Dermot?
It's on paper, but the money's given back to the councils.
Yeah, so Councillor Murphy is basically correct. So the as always, so the combined authority is the transport authority. That's where the responsibility lies. But Councillor Murphy is entirely correct. It's been delegated back to Peterborough and the county council. I think this may be something you want the officer to touch on when they give you a briefing on what's going on with buses, because as the mayor indicated when he was dealing with questions from yourselves, I think that he gave an example somewhere in there of sort of stepping in a bit and making sure that the CPCA's views were known. So I think that would be a good issue we could tease out with the officers, the one that Councillor Murphy's raised, as to how exactly does it work. And as Councillor Murphy says, in terms of the emergency planning, partly because of the status of the combined authority as not being a first responder, is that most of the combined authority's input is into the economic subgroup. So again, as Councillor Murphy says, the gold and silver commands, there's an issue there as to what role the combined authority is playing with them at the higher level. So perhaps if we weave that into what the officers are going to do on what's going on with buses generally in COVID, and then that might give us some clarity.
Yep, that sounds good. Right, if there's nothing more, Robert, have you anything else to say?
No, am I on mute? No, I'm not on mute. What I will do is send you all a meeting invite for the next, say, 3 Mondays.
Yep,
and then, as I say, I'll send you the position statement this afternoon, and then maybe you can fill in the gaps. But what I shall do is invite Oliver Howarth again to speak to us on Monday, and maybe one of the other transport colleagues as well next Monday. Yeah,
that's lovely. Right, thank you everyone for staying behind for this meeting. Look forward to hearing from you next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you stay on, Robert?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
If the officers can stay on, Councillor Hay, and we'll just do the sort of tidy up afterwards. Yeah.
Right, then. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye. Stay safe.
Thank you. That's it.
No, thanks for that, Robert. Went really smoothly, I think. That was good. I think I know I keep banging on about it, but I'm just not convinced other councils are doing this.
No, I don't think so.
I know that was
I know that Essex, as I say, are definitely not doing anything. Was it Councillor Dupre last week said that East Cams had
shut down,
cancelled everything to the end of May, hadn't they?
Yeah. I mean, like that was a pre-meeting. It wasn't public. Press and public weren't there, but I think that was a pretty good use of nearly 2 hours.
Yeah, it was.
I don't feel that was wasted time.
Yeah.
I think the mayor was very helpful of the mayor to do what he did.
Exactly.
I think a bit random that Austin came, but again, very helpful when he was.
I think he didn't. I mean, I'd emailed him and Dom had emailed him as well this morning to say the formal meeting wasn't happening, but he's obviously just not picked those up.
So I don't know. I've sent sort of stuff to Association of Democratic Services officers. We've sent stuff to Centre for Public Scrutiny.
I was going to say CFPS as well, yeah.
And the Combined Authority Governance Network, just saying, look, we're not saying we're perfect, but here's our web pages, here's our recordings if you want to talk to us. And so far it's been a bit quiet, but I'm really proud of it. I think this is good.
I thought it worked really, really well. I mean, there's obviously the Councillor Miscandlin issue is, I've got a message from Dan to say it's basically where he lives is the issue there. There's not a lot we can do about that. And obviously Councillor Connor didn't attend because he doesn't do technology. So,
well, he's going to find it difficult in our brave new world, isn't he?
I think we had 12 members in attendance.
Did we get up to 12? I thought it was lower. But...
No, I had, I wrote them down. Dupre, Miscandlin, Scutt, Halins, Sharp, Hay, Chamberlain, Price, Gehring, Corney, Coles, Murphy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, yeah.
That's not bad. So we're basically missing about 3, aren't we?
Yeah. And Councillor Corney had an Elland Road poster behind him.
I was going to say he's quite Leeds, isn't he? Yeah. Obviously, I missed the chance. Well, my Leeds mug is, I think, on my desk back at work, so, or on the shelf at work, so I can't sort of hold it up and take a sip graciously. It's a weird one actually, because A, it's cruel that football stopped, because obviously life is empty and meaningless. And B, the risk is, I think, it's one of those weird things, because football's a bit of a habit.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see, because obviously people like myself have renewed our season tickets, but it's going to be really interesting as to.
Well, you might have to start supporting a team in Belarus or something.
but you can see the point though, that there's no point watching the podcasts or listening to the podcast. There's no point really in following on Twitter all the people, because there's nothing to comment on. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting. It's not just football, a lot of other stuff that people's habits will change. They'll get used to not doing some things, and I think some things just won't pick up again. Football's probably the exception. Sorry, I've digressed a bit there. In terms of following it up, what I'm thinking, Robert, is to do some fairly rough notes of what's been said, and then clear them with the chair, and then say to members, look, we note that a few members were unable to join in. I'll do a pre-bit just to say it wasn't a formal meeting and to deal with the call-in, and then just sort of circulate it.
Yes,
so that we've got so basically some notes for the chair.
Yeah.
What we might need to do is get the mayor or Ashton. So the reason for Ashton is he's sort of the mayor's representative on Earth.
Yes.
So if you copy in Ashton, he will actually check that they're happy with what's down as what the mayor said. So we could get that done. And similarly with Austin and John T.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful. The bus thing is fiendishly complicated, partly because what was the mayor saying? He's saying that talks about roadworks, but he seemed to be suggesting that county had yanked some funding at some point, and that rings a bell. That he seemed to be saying that because county, I think the implication that we'll have to tease it out is that county were going, if you ain't running a bus service, you're not getting paid.
Yeah.
which was wrong. That never should have got to that within that
said
time scale.
that's why he's having discussions.
He
at government
steps
level,
in.
isn't it?
Government then do the supply chain stuff. So of course it bloody because the government's point. Sorry, just to try and share. So the government's point is, if you don't support your supply chain now, you won't have a supply chain in 3 or 6 months' time, or you'll lose huge chunks of it. So God knows what county we're playing out there. It's just outrageous. So anyway, we've now got the practice note on supply chains. We've got a letter from Grant Shapps on buses, loads of legal work being done with the other combined authority legal team. So that's actually a bit fiendish, but that's my problem. I'll get Robert. I'll give Robert Parkin a heads up to say, because he's leading on that, to say we'll need some sort of brief summary of what's going on there. Although I think the reality is that TFG members are just going to say, can you just reassure us that the buses are being protected?
Now, I wasn't sure if Robert Parkin was online at that stage. I know he was at some stage during the meeting, but whether he was there for the mayor's part, I can't recall.
Yeah, I won't do it. I'll just set up the email. I won't send it now. Just to I'll just send him something saying we'll need by next Monday probably to have a brief summary of any government policy or whatever on the buses to match up with whatever Oliver, whoever brings us. It's going to be interesting. Actually, the wider issue is that, as I said, it's wood for the trees, isn't it? You know, if the real issue now is, you know, are we going to have any bloody buses? Then I'm not saying we're ready yet, but we might want to say, at least have open the idea that that's what they should report on.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bit pointless having a sort of, you know, here's a bus strategy that is probably going to get put even in the even longer grass when everyone's screaming about, well, am I going to have any buses?
Exactly.
New student year or whatever.
Oh, Councillor Scanlon's joined us. So it's all finished now, Councillor Scanlon.
Are you back?
He's still just connecting, I think. Councillor Scanlon, the meeting is now finished.
Yeah, I realise that, and I apologise with my brilliant internet. It's just shut me down, and it was extremely frustrating. But I appreciate the call from your IT department to try and counteract it. I think the only people who can counteract it are BT. And getting rid of COVID-19 with all the kids doing their downloads with Netflix and Xboxes and everything else that's going on. It just makes it so frustrating.
Well, it should be their homework.
It could be their homework. I very much doubt it though. But I did appreciate the call to try and cure it. To say the only cure is BT.
Yeah, just while you're on, Councillor Scanlon, I think the chair made an interesting point that what this is showing up in terms of the overview and scrutiny role is the importance of good digital connectivity across the area.
Absolutely.
I think it may, going forward, I think we might want to sort of prioritise that. Obviously, it's up to the chair, but we might want to prioritise that in terms of the work of the committee going forward, because we're going to have a spell where people are going to be doing this because of COVID, and then everyone seems to be assuming that post-COVID, people will have got into working practices that work well. They won't want to change back. But thanks for trying so hard to stay with us. What we are going to do is Robert's going to do some rough notes of this informal meeting, because a few members couldn't get in at all, and then we'll clear them with the chair and circulate them so people will have a note of what's happened. So anyway, thanks for trying so hard to be with us. Anyway.
Thank you very much, Dermot. Thank you very much to everybody. Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
So yeah, so we might have to refocus the Tuscan Finish group on where are the bloody buses and are they going to survive, rather than what we're going to do in 2 or 3 years' time on bus franchising. So I think really just some notes, and everything else will flow from there. If you could also jack up the Tuscan Finish group meetings, that'd be good.
Yeah.
And talk
I'll also make contact with the Cam Metro members, of which only Marcus was there. Marcus Gehring. You think he was the only one that was in attendance.
Councillor Price as well. I think Councillor Price.
Oh, is he on it? Okay. And get them to agree similar.
I think Councillor Sharp was in as well because he's on it too.
Oh, is he? I thought it was.
Have a look anyway. See if
I'll have a look.
See if I'm wrong.
Halings was one of, not Halings, Jordan, who wasn't with us today.
Yeah,
I think she's one.
We're missing some.
Yeah.
I think if you can start with the notes, everything else flows from then, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We can then get them approved by the various people who've spoken, by the chair, and then get them out.
I'll get them out
to
to
do
the chair.
something on the website just to say couldn't hold the meeting.
Yeah, I think Emily has done that. She thanked me for the note anyway.
Yeah.
Although there was a follow up. Let me just see what the follow up was to that. Democracy Reporter is asking if it is meeting informally today. Oh, it's all right. Yeah. I don't know why he's interested whether the meeting is happening informally, but that's all. I'll just respond to that.
Yeah, I think what we don't want to do is open the door that we've had something that they can see.
Now, what I'll do is just say, yes, it did meet informally, and it will be setting up a future meeting currently scheduled for 27th of April, but one may be set up in advance of that depending on other factors.
Yeah, I think the other important issue was that as and when we have a virtual CA board meeting, they wanted a want to sort of sort out the coordinate the two meetings.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I've got with Blunrow. I don't think government's particularly concerned about these virtual meetings. I think their assumption is that we'll do everything under delegation, forgetting that delegation is no use for scrutiny or for audit and governance. And so I would hold up. In other words, really nice if they did it, but A, I don't think they will. I don't think it's high on their list. And B, depending what the rules say, we might wish they hadn't. They could make it spectacularly complicated if they wanted to. I think the other issue would be thinking out loud that if we had a proper full virtual lawful CA board meeting, yeah, we do the scrutiny on the Monday, but whether we could use this format, say the mayor says, oh, I need another decision making meeting to do transport stuff or whatever, we might want to do one of these on the Monday.
Yeah.
And just go, mayor's going to be doing that. Because what I've said is that for the mayor's decision making meeting, we pretend it's a CA board meeting, we publish it all online, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So if we followed that, we could say to the scrutiny people, look, the agenda's up for the mayor's decision making. Let's have a Zoom informal meeting.
Yes, exactly the same as today, basically. Yeah.
Because when we were last discussing this with the chair, it's before we trialled it with business board and the mayor's meeting and this one. Now we know it works. Logically, we could work out the questions
exactly
here, and I think it does work. I'm really pleased. Yeah. I think this is so much better than sending 17 emails and all that.
Exactly.
So thanks again, Robert. Really good.
Yeah, I'll knock together these notes from this morning, get them out to the chair late this afternoon.
Yeah.
Copy you, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah. Do you want to say if you actually? Well, try to think it through. Do you want to check with Ashton before they go to the chair?
Oh yes.
Or just snip out the mayor's bit and say.
Yeah, take it. In fact, what I might do is
snip out Austin's bit. Maybe do those bits first. Yeah.
I think I'll do those separately. Send them out to the relevant people.
Give them a really tight time scale because we want to get them out. But,
no problem. Okay.
Famous victory. Yeah. Well, no one else is bothering.
No, I don't think so.
No one has to give a toss about this. And let's be honest, they can say, as they do, well, oh yeah, but we've got housing, we've got thousands of tenants, we've got all these social care clients, we're too busy. But it's different teams that do this stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't really understand. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, leave that. Thanks again.
Trumpet.
And I'll go and get myself a light snack, I think. No, cheers, mate. Thanks again.
All right then.
Bye then.
See you later. Bye.